Well, hello everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to Evenbreak Explores. This is a series of events that we put on for employers. It's not really training, it's not really a workshop, it's more of an exploration, hence the name. And what we tend to do is think of a subject around disability inclusion and bring in someone who is either an expert or has experience in this particular area and have an informal conversation. And what we'd really love is for you to join in that conversation. So if you have any comments or questions, or maybe any examples of what we're talking about, please pop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can certainly bring you into that conversation as and when you want to join in. Just to let you know that we have some accessibility options for you. So we have a live captioner. Welcome, Kim. From My Clear Text. So if you want to switch on the live transcript, you'll be able to have the live captions. And also we have Louise with us, who is a BSL interpreter. We haven't been asked for either of these. We like to put them on as a matter of principle anyway, partly because this is recorded and other people who access may want to use those facilities. But also because I think it's just a demonstration of good practice. And really much of what we're going to talk about today is that accessibility should be there kind of as a default mechanism. It shouldn't be something that's added on or retrofitted afterwards. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jane Hatton and I'm CEO of Evenbreak, which is a social enterprise. We only employ disabled people here. Our main offering is a disability specialist job board. And so we believe that our lived experience means that we have experience of the barriers that our candidates face when they're looking for work as well. It also means that when we're working with employers, we're working from a place of authenticity, and more about that later. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Barry O'Donovan from NHS England. Barry and I have had loads and loads of conversations over a period of time on this subject of disability equality. And one thing that really kept coming up time and time again in our conversations was about the value of lived experience when we're designing services or really policies or the whole benefit of having that lived experience within the design process. And it's certainly something we do a lot of at Evenbreak. So Barry, I'm thrilled to have you here. Would you like to just introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure, thanks Jane, and lovely to be here today. So I'm Barry O'Donovan and my pronouns are he and him. So I'm EDI Consultancy Lead at NHS England London region. And I support a number of London clinical commissioning groups, giving them sort of subject matter expertise on equality, diversity and inclusion. And I'm a former co-chair of our staff network, the Disability and Wellbeing Network. And I'm a co-chair of the National Ability Network, which is the organization for all of the disabled staff networks, for the chairs to come together and discuss disability related topics. So today I might have a disability hat on, but on an intersectional basis, as all of us do, I tick many other boxes. And I like to try and think of sort of some intersectional approaches to things. So delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Barry. And again, don't forget, if anybody wants to join in, just put something in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll respond to that as and when we see it. I think this this whole issue about lived experience is really important, because I can remember, I've been in the field of diversity for what feels like centuries. And, I can remember going to so many so-called diversity events where it would be, white people talking to white people about what Black people needed, or men discussing with other men about what women needed, and non-disabled people, you'd have a whole disability conference full of non-disabled people telling other non-disabled people what disabled people need. And that was kind of the tradition. And I suppose it goes back to that issue about privilege and who makes the decisions. And clearly there were a lot of problems with that approach, in that the people who were making the decisions really had no lived experience of the issue that they were talking about. And that's not to say that there isn't a huge place for allies, and there is. I'm not saying that it should be only disabled people that ever discuss disability or get involved in it. Absolutely not. We want everybody to be involved in that conversation, but a conversation that doesn't include the group that is being supported or done to, or whatever it is, just doesn't make any sense at all. Because I can try and imagine what it's like to have a protected characteristic I don't have, but I'm going to get it wrong because I don't live that every day of my life. I've heard of training where people will say, oh, put this blindfold on and you'll immediately know what it's like to be blind. No, I won't. I can take that blindfold off at any point, or here you are, here's a wheelchair, use that for a day and you'll know exactly what it's like to be a wheelchair user. No, I won't. But actually I can find out what it's like to be blind and what it's like to be a wheelchair user by asking people who live that experience every day of their lives. And so with Evenbreak, we made the decision, right at the beginning, to only employ disabled people, because what we do is support disabled people into work, and it would be inauthentic of us if we didn't have that lived experience. But as you said, Barry, that intersectionality is absolutely key, isn't it? Because, nobody is just disabled. They will also have a skin color and a sexual orientation and a gender and, a culture, all of those different things. And so we could have had a whole team of I don't know, white disabled people or straight disabled people or female disabled people, and still not have the lived experience of our candidates, because there will be all those intersectional issues. So we've made sure that our workforce isn't just having a range of different conditions, but also different ages, different genders and all the rest of it, because it's just so important. And for me, designing a service that is there for the whole community needs to involve the whole community in that decision. And just thinking of a particular example, Barry, I remember you telling me about the workplace adjustments process at NHS England and how that had been influenced and changed. Could you just remind us of that story?
Sure. So let me talk NHS England up as a first sentence of going, they're really at the forefront of what the NHS is doing right now on workplace adjustments. so let me say they've come a journey and got there. But I think when I joined just over 5 years ago, I have a special chair and a leg rest. And it took about 6 months between using Access to Work and my line manager filling in forms and applying for it for the chair to arrive at my desk. And I think at that stage, what went through my mind was, people don't care, my employer isn't interested, I'm a bother to keep raising this. Maybe they're making things up, it's not really delayed, it's just they're not, so there's lots of impact of not having the chair and the leg rest in place. And I thought it was just me, and I thought, well, there has to be a better way to do this. And then when I spoke to other people who had adjustments, I found that they also had a similar experience.
It wasn't personal.
Yeah, it wasn't personal, although sometimes it can feel that way. And then I discovered that, well, the NHS England approach then was each line manager was responsible for paying for, so funding, and also procuring, ordering, and making sure it was in place, any reasonable adjustment, be it software or a chair or a screen or something like that. Obviously, most of the line managers have a day job, so they're not experts in this. Quite often, they didn't really know how to do it. And if you added in the complexity of Access to Work funding something, then dealing with an external third party, was just another burden. I went and I looked around and benchmarked to see what other organizations were doing. And I know you had an example too, but I looked at Department of Work and Pensions, who obviously run the disability confidence scheme. So you would like to think they are at the forefront.
Well, they should be leaders, shouldn't they, in this field?
Yeah. Well, I think they are. I think they are. Well, they were certainly ahead of us at the time. So they had a centrally funded adjustments team. So line managers, it didn't come out of individual budgets. They also removed the word reasonable from the title and called it workplace adjustments, going, well, with access to work, I think the annual financial limit is over £60,000. So reasonable makes you think there's some sort of business decision there, whereas perhaps there isn't a financial decision. You'd be really hard pressed to spend that level of money. So yeah, so we set up a task group, and we got people from HR, from facilities, from estates, from IT together, and we got some people with lived experience of reasonable adjustments to come in and talk to them, because we could have made a really good rational case and got lots of data and so on, but people coming in and not in an angry way, but I guess in an emotional way, talking about the frustrations they felt, and I got quite emotional. I wasn't expecting to get emotional, but I did, and it actually really touched people's hearts. And I think that's the really special thing of using lived experience, is it influences people on an emotional level.
It makes it real, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then we got a series of champions across the organization who could see the impact it was having on people. I thought, well, this shouldn't be happening, and it will then connect all of their things. Like they might have a family member or someone in their department who has had a similar condition or frustration, and so it then becomes personal to them as well. So we then IT lent us their help desk system. So now you can go on the intranet and fill in a form to request an adjustment. It gets logged on the IT system and you get a reference number. There's a 20-day service level agreement. It's paid for centrally, and there's a central team that do all of the procurement side. So they built really good relationships with suppliers. So if anything gets delayed or held up, they have that relationship to sort it out. And it's just taken a lot of the burden off the line managers, and also off the people requesting adjustments. And from a business planning perspective, we now can tell you how many of every type of adjustment we have in place, how much it costs us, how many requests we get, if there's peaks and troughs in the year. Whereas before, when it was individual, it went through our sort of finance systems, untraceably. It wasn't put down as, workplace adjustment. It was put down as chair or screen or software. So we couldn't pick out how many of anything we were doing. So it's really changed how we do that and made it much more compassionate. I think maybe the final point for me is the team that was doing, the central team that was then processing these adjustments. We did some training with them, and some of them have lived experience too. To go that sometimes people will call you and they might be emotional, tearful, angry, frustrated, because whatever they've requested is not in place. They might have experience from previous work situations where it's taken ages to get it in place. So they're expecting the same to happen again. So it's really encouraging those people to maybe listen and not react and not take whatever emotion they get on the phone call personally, but perhaps deal with it compassionately and realize maybe where those people are coming from. So it's very different to, angry customer calling up going, I ordered this, where is it?
Yes.
Somebody actually needs it to do their job. It's on health grounds. And if they don't have it, they might feel frustrated or not valued or not empowered to do their work.
I mean, the benefits of having that lived experience, look at the process and change it, are huge, aren't they? Because it means that you don't, you were saying that it took 6 months for your reasonable adjustments, workplace adjustments to be provided. That's 6 months, your first 6 months in a new role where you can't perform as productively as you'd want to because you haven't got the access needs met. And so the organization is missing out on your productivity. You're feeling, disloyal to the organization because you don't feel valued. But also it's saving money because as I think you said to me previously, there was a lot of, oh, let's get occupational health in, when actually that often wasn't what was needed. And it lengthened the process and it gave a lot of stress to a lot of people, line manager, candidate, new employee, whatever. And so it's actually saving the NHS money. It means that people are more productive. It means that people feel listened to. It means there's a process that you can now get data from. I mean, there's nothing not to love about that improvement, is there? And yet it wouldn't have happened without using lived experience to look at the process and say, I wonder if there are ways we can do this better. There are no losers in this scenario, are there?
No, there aren't. And again, I think the occupational health point's really important because, I think at NHS England, we use an external organisation. I'm sure it's £400 or £500 for a referral. And if you've got an adjustment that's costing £400 or £500, you're sort of doubling the cost. So we did manage to come up with a list of standard adjustments that we would not make an occupational health referral for. So as you say, that immensely improved the process. And I mean, if you come from the perspective of people generally have goodwill, it wasn't in the old process that line managers or finance managers or procurement were trying to frustrate people.
No, of course. No, just the system wasn't geared up, was it?
Yeah, it just wasn't a volume process that they were too familiar with. And so I guess it gets them. So a line manager can actually be, hang on a minute, I know what to do now and I can support somebody, and it doesn't take a huge amount of me finding out things and putting things in place. So I really agree with you that it really has benefited everybody. And I think from an intersectional perspective, particularly with perhaps in post-COVID with flexible working, I think this is where disability is the trailblazer, in that we talk to organizations about having a more inclusive workplace, and we perhaps have the discussions to try and get some of that inclusion in place. And then that makes it more inclusive for everybody.
Yeah, no, so, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we'll probably see a bit later on that, again, if we improve processes from an accessibility and disability perspective, it tends to improve it for everything else as well. We had not the same situation at all. We were designing a couple of years ago, a year ago, a brand new service at Evenbreak that we'd never delivered before, which was career support service for disabled people looking for new or better work. And it was a brand new service for us. It's actually a brand new service in terms of the way we deliver it. And we wanted to make absolutely certain that it met the needs of the candidates who would be using it. And we know that there are some really good career support organisations out there, but we also know there are some that are not accessible or for whom aren't relevant for our candidates for whatever reason, or there may be eligibility criteria that some candidate, there were gaps in provision. And we wanted to make sure that whatever we offered actually filled those gaps in a way that was accessible to our candidates. Now, we are a group of 17 to 20 disabled people, but we also we were all in work, we all work for Evenbreak. So what we wanted to do was get the perspective of disabled people who were looking for work and what they might value and need. And so we did a huge survey of all of our candidates. We did a focus group of 50 disabled people who were looking for work. We actually, through the funder that was funding the initial start of the career service, provided us with disabled people who'd never heard of Evenbreak, so we could get their perspective as well. Because our own candidates tend to be quite loyal and won't always be as critical, perhaps, as complete outsiders might be. And we used all of that together to build and design a service from scratch that was going to meet the needs of that lived experience. So not us assuming, oh, well, what they'd probably want is this, or maybe that would be a good idea. We wanted to test it out. And I'm convinced that we got a much better product service as a result of all of that input, because a lot of what we were making assumptions about actually weren't borne out in practice. So we made an assumption, for example, that what our candidates would find really useful would be to have a an online kind of forum where they could meet each other and support each other, and there could be all that peer support. And actually, when we went back to the focus group and to candidates, would this be good for you? They said, no, not really. What we'd really like are mentors from organisations who are where we want to be, that can help us navigate around the barriers to get there. And so the whole service was designed specifically with those needs in mind. Nobody making assumptions, nobody thinking, well, this would be a good thing. And for us, that was so important, because what we could have done was started a whole service that looked good and sounded good, but actually wasn't effective in what we were trying to achieve. And so that lived experience input, and I would say to any organization who's designing a new service or a new policy, or reviewing existing policies like workplace adjustments, to really use that lived experience voice in informing how that works. And I think, I know one of the other things we talked about, Barry, is about assistive technology. And we're, again, very lucky at Evenbreak in having a diverse range of people within our team. And for example, we have 2 people in the team who use screen readers to access, software. And that's so great for us, because what it means is, if we're looking at buying new software, new tech, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever it might be, we're looking at we've recently bought an e-learning platform. If we're looking at job board providers, what we really need to do is make sure that whatever that tech is, it's completely accessible, for example, to somebody who uses a screen reader. And so we can test it out first with our team, which is invaluable, because a lot of organizations will say, oh, this technology, yeah, it's perfectly accessible. And often it isn't. You test it and you find out, well, you say it's accessible, but actually this doesn't work and that doesn't work, or whatever it might be. So having that lived experience within Evenbreak means that we can really test any technology that we're going to buy or commission or whatever it might be, before we spend the money, to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And we're a very small organisation, so it's easier for us to do that. Obviously, NHS England is much bigger. So how does lived experience help you in terms of assistive technology and technology generally?
I think we have copied the concepts from Evenbreak of that. So I think the process I described before about adjustments, it sort of created all of these ripple effects. One of which was obviously identifying our assistive technology users, because we knew who was ordering and purchasing software licenses or screen readers, or even those covers that go over the screens to change the colors and make them more readable. Yeah. So we then discovered we had 120 people using assistive technology. And again, with my role as a co-chair of the Disability and Wellbeing Network, we frequently got things coming into our inbox going, oh, they've just changed the intranet page, or they've launched this new software, or they got this external discussion board to get lots of staff ideas, and then that wasn't compatible with some of the technology. So we set up an expert user group where we invited these 120 people, not all of which came, obviously, to come along and talk about things. And we connected them to the IT department. And then we could, when IT were doing tenders, we got them involved in that. So we brought them right to the front of the process. So rather at the end of the process, something goes live, we then find there's an issue. It might require quite a lot of rework or even withdrawal of the software. We can get them involved at the start of the process. It's then actually embedding some knowledge in those IT staff who are doing procurement, because as they're having the discussions, they're learning. We also kept notes as we were going along. So each time we did this, we did some digital accessibility notes. So we produced a sort of living document guide, so that we could share that with people. So if we weren't able to get a group together, then there was something we could share with everybody. And I think that that's really, really helped us sort of bring that lived experience. And it's so key, because you might be an expert in IT, but if you're not dependent, I think your blindfold example, if you're not dependent on a screen reader or a text to speech or software, you might understand the functionality of it, but you don't know what the nuances of the product are.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can you? And actually, it's, why would you guess when you've got people there who can absolutely tell you, because they live that experience all the time. I think that point you make about bringing people in at the beginning, that inclusive design is crucial, isn't it? Because retrofitting inclusion into something afterwards is never going to work, is it? It's going to be far more expensive, far more time consuming, never as effective, in anything, whether it's architecture, if you're going to build a building and then afterwards think, oh, how do we make this accessible? You're going to have to take half of it down and start again. Why would you do that? So I think that principle applies, that kind of inclusive design, universal design, really applies to anything that we do, doesn't it? In terms of getting that inclusion, that lived voice right at the beginning, when we're planning what we're going to do, when we're thinking about what we're going to buy, when we're thinking about delivery, it's actually getting that right from the start. And then, of course, there may be things that you need to tweak as you go along. It's a living thing, but rather than trying to get it kind of more or less right, and then afterwards thinking, oh no, we shouldn't have done it that way, we should have done it this way, is a waste of everybody's time, isn't it? So it should be really right at the forefront of any change or review that we're doing, is getting that lived experience in there at that point is really important.
Yeah. I have a lived experience example that taught me that lesson. I think it was about 7 years ago. My leg was getting more and more painful, and I was driving a manual car, and I worked in the community, NHS in the community, so I had to drive around. So it was part of my work. So I contacted Access to Work, and they said, well, yes, we can assess you for whether we can give you an adaptation to this clutch thing. So I booked an assessment through Access to Work. I had to drive about an hour from my house to where there's only 2 assessment centres in London or something. Booked it all, turned up. The guy somehow or other hadn't got the booking and wasn't there. So this frustration of the lived experience of you're trying to get all these adjustments in place and it doesn't quite work out. So I spoke to him on the phone, and his advice was really clear. Well, yeah, you can come back. I can rebook and you can come back another time. But basically, what we do with manual cars is we have this really clunky mechanical lever and a button, and it's never going to be as good as just getting an automatic car. So you can't really retrofit a manual car to be automatic. You're much better actually just swapping it for an automatic car. And then I went back to Access to Work and had this conversation with them, and they said, well, yeah, we instead of paying for the adaptation, we'll do the same age, mileage, and model car, but we'll do a proportion of the cost to switch to an automatic one. So I learned in that example that you might think you want to retrofit an adjustment, but sometimes there's a really simple answer. Just it's actually do it from the beginning.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the story of a candidate with visual impairment who turned up on her first day in her new job and was given a really expensive pair of, is it Google that make them? Those glasses that have a camera, and they read, the text to you and all, it's fantastic. And they were quite proud and said, oh, here you are, we've bought you these amazing glasses. And she said, oh, I've just brought my magnifying glass with me. And if they'd have just said to her at the first, what adjustment do you need? Rather than, oh, I wonder what she might need, let's do this. It's about getting that asking that lived experience what they need, rather than trying to assume. And again, they wasted loads of money on something that just wasn't needed, and something that already existed was, more than adequate. So yeah, about not making assumptions and looking at not retrofitting, but there's often solutions already out there. I mean, if you look at things like smartphones now, I mean, they're incredibly accessible, and give people access that they wouldn't have had before they existed. And I think we said earlier, Barry, that, if you change things to make, whatever it is, a policy or a building or technology or whatever it is, to be more accessible for disabled people, it actually opens up accessibility for everybody. I mean, the example I often give is, automatic doors opening don't just help wheelchair users, they help people with buggies or carrying heavy things or, whatever it might be. And I think we find that in a lot of, a lot of instances. And I remember you talking about using venues for events and things like that, and how you use lived experience to actually decide which venues to use. Could you talk us through that?
Sure, and this also rippled out of that first sort of bringing together people from procurement, IT, HR, estates, and so on. So when we came to renegotiate our travel and events contract, obviously pre-COVID, we discovered that we brought in people with lived experience of booking events. So our expert bookers, the people who did the highest volume, and we had a discussion with them. And they were actually real champions for inclusion. And they had their own lists of venues that they knew well and would use. So when we spoke to the supplier that we used, they said, well, each of our venues, they fill in an accessibility form. So when you go on the booking system, it has things like, yes, it's got step-free access, it's got a lift, it's got accessible toilets. But when you get to the venue, we often found that the accessible route was through the kitchen. To get from the room to the accessible toilet, it was a different wing of the building. And there was one of those manually operated lifts that you needed to find a member of staff to use to get there. So we found all of these nuances that weren't covered by what you would think would be an accessibility questionnaire. And we decided to then make it more intersectional. So we brought in all of the employee sort of resource groups. We looked at breakout rooms, or a quiet room, which could be a prayer room. It could be a breastfeeding room. It could be have a quiet breakaway from the room for neurodiverse purposes, or if you needed to have a lie down or something. We looked at the menu. So did the food options cover lots of different requirements? Through bringing all those people together, we came up with quite a long list of criteria. I think the other key one, perhaps, with what's happening in the Ukraine, is the sort of social responsibility or ethical question. I think back then it was the sort of LGBTQ plus question, which was, is the organization we're booking with, are they showing that they're supportive of that community? But yeah, we managed to use that sort of expert user panel system to then redesign the criteria we were going to use in choosing our travel and events venues. And then we developed our own internal sort of TripAdvisor reviews. So taking the idea from those expert bookers who had a list of their preferred venues, can we put that in one place where everybody can access it? And we also took the decision where venues weren't getting good reviews to actually go and speak with them and explain to them what perhaps needed to change, because the idea wasn't to come up with a green list and a red list. It was actually to promote inclusion. so we could actually use that in a positive way to go and speak to other organizations as well.
And that's really important, isn't it? Because we know that the organizations that say they're accessible, that's many more organizations than those that actually are accessible. And what we really want is for them all to be accessible, so we have more choice. We had a very similar thing. We have a get together every now and again. We've got one next month as it happens, and finding venues that will meet all of our access needs. So we have people who are using wheelchairs or mobility scooters or crutches, or who need support worker, and all of those things, or have sight loss, hearing loss. Getting a venue that will meet all of those different needs is really quite a challenge. And the last time we all got together, we found, I won't name it, but we found a hotel that said it was accessible. We needed, one of our team needed a hoist to get in and out of bed and around the bathroom. And we only found 2 hotels in the whole of London that had availability, that had a room with a hoist in, which was pretty shocking in itself. But anyway, we booked this whole thing, and we rocked up, and we told them the whole, what everybody's access needs were in advance. And the person who needed the hoist had a hoist, but no heating. And this was in November, because the heating wasn't working in that room. And it's kind of, disabled people don't need to be warm, do they? It was kind of a, so you've met that need, but you've forgotten about a very basic need. One of the other members of the team was using a mobility scooter, and it turned out that in his room, although it was a fairly get-aroundable fairly easily, there was no access to a plug socket for him to charge the mobility scooter up overnight. So, there were all sorts of things that were not great, and consequently, we can't go back there because it doesn't meet our needs. And so, yes, you're right. Having a list of organisations that I've really found it difficult to find hotels that had a hoist in, a bedroom with a hoist, because they don't advertise that on the website. And you've got to phone each one up individually. But actually, to have a list somewhere that says we've found these venues and they do have all of these criteria that we're looking for is invaluable, isn't it? Saves so much time in the future. And they tend to be better venues generally at things like, if there's a last minute change or something happens, that can be really adaptable, and we'll think of solutions and not just, well, that's the way we do it, take it or leave it. And so, that's amazing. And it's so much of this, from what you've said, has came out from this very first thing, which was around workplace adjustments, and actually is spread out into technology and venues and all the rest of it. So again, it's another example of using lived experience. It doesn't just have 1 or 2 benefits for an organization. It has, many benefits for an organization. And, as you say, they ripple out and everybody benefits from it. One of the things I worry about a little bit, a lot, is that all organizations have lived experience of a whole range of issues within them, but a lot of those are hidden, and we can only use lived experience if we know it's there. And we know that in a lot of organizations, people who have hidden differences, whether that's sexual orientation or whether it's a hidden disability, whether it's neurodiversity or a mental health condition or whatever it might be, may not be open about those differences within the workplace. And so we can't use that lived experience. We can't take benefit from it. What kinds of things do you think organizations could be doing to encourage people to engage with all of this stuff that we're talking about, where lived experience is so valuable? How do we encourage people to say, actually, I can support there because I have this hidden difference? How do we make people feel, I suppose, psychologically safe to get engaged?
Well, I think having people they can trust. So firstly, I guess it's a pretty obvious thing to say it should be voluntary.
Yes. Right, you're going to get involved in this. Yes.
But yeah, I guess having somebody who's trustworthy and setting something up as a safe space. I quite often, if there's a really difficult topic to talk about, I quite often use something like Menti or Slido, where people can contribute something anonymously, and then you can perhaps have a discussion about that point, so that it doesn't put somebody on the spot to bring something up.
Yeah.
I think also the amount of awareness sessions you do. So I know at one of the clinical commissioning groups I've been working at, we introduced the workforce disability equality standard report for the first time. And when it got presented to the Equality Committee and the governing body, one of the questions that came up was, the declaration rate at senior level for disability is very low. And I'm sure there was people at that level who have a long-term health condition. So there was this thing of, well, what is a disability? And what are the criteria? And why aren't people declaring? And what could we do to get people to declare and stuff? But just making that conversation happen. So it's not about pushing it and going, well, you know, this is the answer and so on. We're getting people to talk about, well, what is a disability, or what are some of the barriers that would stop people disclosing and so on. That then tells you the organization's sort of willing. Firstly, it's got a desire for people to disclose.
Yes.
And secondly, it's willing to listen to what the problems are about disclosing. And it's really hard to get to those problems. It could be that people don't know how to update the HR record. It could be that people don't want to due to stigma. It could be that since somebody joined, they acquired a health condition and they never thought to update it. So there can be many factors which sort of influence that.
Or even that they don't consider themselves disabled. I know a lot of people
yeah.
who are, you know, perhaps have diabetes will say, well, I'm not disabled, I've just got diabetes. Or even people with, you know, who are profoundly deaf sometimes describe themselves as a minority language speaker rather than being disabled. But of course, by the social model of disability, they're disabled because we don't all do sign language. So yeah, that discussion about what do we mean by disability is crucial, isn't it? Because there may be many people within the organization who say, well, I'd get involved, but I'm not disabled. And actually they may well be.
Yeah, and I think one of my things I picked up is, particularly with learning disability and autism, is quite often it's a parent or caregiver that can be the most vocal person at work, and can be the strongest advocate for change. So I think if you can find those people in the organization, it really helps. One of the things that I've experienced is, you know, one of the clinical commissioning groups, they were just discussing each characteristics equality report with that group. So the race one with the sort of BAME network, and the disability one with the age and ability network. So we actively took the decision to still do those sessions, but also to do an all staff session, so that everybody can come along and talk about what the data is saying and what the themes are, and hear about make suggestions about what actions the organization should take. Because whether you like it or not, if you're a minority, you sort of need the majority to at least be sort of tolerant and go, yes, I can see change is necessary. Ideally, you'd like them on board and get them to go, well, I can see why this, you know, I can see that this change could actually benefit me or people I know. So I think we saw this ripple on. So September, we did the race one, all staff and that particular staff network. In October, we did the disability and gender pay one. And then in November, we had our NHS staff survey, and that organisation got the highest response rate in London in the staff survey. And I really believe it's because it went out and displayed a commitment of time and resources to talk about difficult topics, to present data to staff, to get staff involved in the decision making. And I think we switched to having about 75% of our equality actions to come from that staff lived experience discussion, and only about 25% coming directly from data.
Which is much more meaningful, isn't it? As you say, you know, that lived experience data is useful, and we need it, but sometimes it can be misleading, and those nuances, those lived experiences, you know, really do bring it to life, don't they, and just make it much more real. And I love the way that you had the all staff groups as well as the individual employee resource groups, because, you know, people want to get involved often but just don't know how to. And I think, you know, one of the things, you know, that you said that really resonates with me is about that people in a minority group need allies. You know, it's not just something. So actually saying to the Black workers group, how can we solve, you know, racism or whatever it might be within our organization, actually they're not the ones that can solve it. It's the rest of us that need to be addressing that issue. They can tell us what needs to change, but it's us that need to change in that scenario. And I think by involving all staff, it actually makes it become much more of an everyday conversation, not a frightening thing that, oh, I better not talk about, I might use the wrong word, I might, you know, is it Black, is it BAME, is it people of colour? Actually, if you're engaged, that's less important, because you can hear what the issues are, you can learn what the language is by listening to other people, but also you can really begin to understand what some of the issues are. And the same with, whether it's gender or disability or sexual orientation or whatever it might be, having those open conversations does a number of things, doesn't it? It says, as an organization, all of this is important to us and we want to improve and we want to hear your opinions and hear your voice and do something about it, which makes that sort of leadership commitment, whether or not they're open about their own differences, quite transparent. But also it means that those conversations, which are perceived to be very difficult and awkward, become much more everyday and ordinary, like we might talk about the weather or what's on TV tonight or whatever it might be. And for me, making disability, as we're talking about in this case, not be the elephant in the room that nobody talks about because we might offend somebody, or, well, I haven't got lived experience, so I can't contribute to this conversation, means that everybody does get involved and engaged and can be, either a voice or allies or pushing for change. And it just makes it more, the whole culture is much more inclusive and open then, rather than, oh, well, that group over there are looking at this, so and I can't be part of that. So it sounds like, and that's worked really well. The evidence is that if people are now engaging in staff engagement surveys, they must feel more listened to, that it's worth them completing those surveys. Because I think a lot of people don't complete them because they think, well, we do this every year and nothing changes. What's the point? But if they can see that things do change, that's really motivating in terms of, getting all of those issues out and knowing that they're being heard and they make a difference.
Yeah, and it's also connecting the staff voice directly to the actions. So yes. There's one thing about, yes, I've responded to a survey, so I've told you what I think, but it's then have you listened and have you come back to me and said, okay, I hear what you think, and I can see there's maybe an issue or a barrier here. What should we do about it? And then perhaps listen to what the feedback people have on that, and then actually, take it seriously. You can't obviously do everything, but obviously, if you are doing some of those things and you let people know, firstly, where the ideas come from to the process, and put it in place, then I think it just really will just continue a positive cycle of sort of engagement and encourage people to participate even more.
Yeah, for sure. So if there's anybody listening to this now who is thinking, actually, I can really see how lived experience can improve pretty much everything we do, and having that voice heard and being involved in decisions, what kind of advice would you give? Where would you start if it's not something that you do already? Where do you think, if you were to go into a new organization that didn't have all of these things in place, what kind of things could organizations do?
Well, I guess I would not be being very true if I didn't say, well, let's see about getting some groups of staff together and ask them, how can we do, as an organization, we want to get more engaged or make it a more inclusive workplace, or whatever the particular focus is. What do you think sort of some of the feedback or barriers are now, and what might best practice or a solution look like? So it would be the first piece of advice would be, well, let's start having some discussion sessions, and the discussion sessions may lead to some common themes that come out, and they may be intersectional across many characteristics. So such as internal opportunities for promotion. That tends to be a pretty intersectional topic that comes up. So lots of groups feel that they perhaps don't do as well as the majority on that topic. And then you're starting to get people to talk and to listen to each other and to bond with each other as well. You're coming up with some themes, and then hopefully you might address some of those and put some actions in place. So it really then benefits the whole organization. I think if you're doing procurement or launching new systems or designing new policies, that this co-design model, and it doesn't just have to be the disability characteristic. Obviously, there's some really good reasons why you would include disability, because for medical reasons, they need things to be adapted or changed. And also then you might need large print or easy read versions of documents. But yeah, if you involve all staff, you start to build that momentum, and that will then start to change the culture. I mean, I guess what has your, if I put the question back to you, because I know you work with a lot more organizations than I do, what would your key piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you mentioned earlier on about leadership commitment, and I think that's, I mean, you can do some of these things without it, but it really does make the process much easier. And I remember one organization that we're working with, and the C-suite said, "Oh, we have no disabled people in the C-suite." But actually they did, because they knew that every board meeting, one of the members asked for the agenda to be in much larger print. So clearly that person was facing barriers. And we know from a lot of research that many people who are in senior management positions, if they didn't have mental health conditions before, almost certainly have since COVID. But very, very, very few talk about it because it's seen as a weakness. There's still a kind of stigma attached to it. But, one organization we worked with, one of the senior partners decided to be open about his own mental health condition, which had been, quite serious. He didn't go into details. You don't need to. Nobody needs to know your medical history. But he spoke about having been in hospital for some months, and then having come back to work and feeling supported and feeling that his work was still interesting. He was supported but not wrapped in cotton wool. And him just talking about his experience openly meant that everybody else in the organization, who would by definition be lower down than him, felt able to talk about mental health. And rather than waiting for a crisis to happen, where they may need months off, were able to say to their manager, "I'm struggling. I'm really struggling at the moment. Can we talk about my workload, or can we talk about, flexible working," or whatever it might be. And that just made it, that one action of one person in a senior position talking about a hidden difference, made it okay for everybody else to do so. And so that's really important. But even if you have leaders who don't have hidden differences or who aren't open about them, as you say, just them really saying very openly, "We really want to improve how we're working in terms of inclusion within this organization. We really want to make sure that everybody who works here feels that they can thrive, that they feel valued, that they feel supported, that they feel their career progression is not hampered by any differences they might have. And we're going to put something in place in order to make that happen." And that might be setting up and supporting employee resource groups. It might be doing surveys. It might be just getting people together on, as you say, on particular topics. So that open commitment from leadership saying, this is something that's really important to us as an organization. And it's not for pink fluffy reasons. It's not because we want to tick boxes or because we think it's a nice moral ethical thing to do, although it is. It's actually about, we want this business to gain the benefit from that lived experience. And we can't do that if we're not attracting and retaining and developing people from all of those groups. And so we need to know what we can do to improve that recruitment and retention and how people feel valued and supported. So people seeing that the very at the top, there is that real commitment to making change is, I think, a really good start. What we sometimes find with organizations is there's something called, what we call the frozen middle. So you might have the senior managers, the senior leaders, who really see the benefits of inclusion and really want it to take place. And the people who are, in the sort of service delivery, the frontline staff, who can see for themselves the benefits of inclusion, or maybe more diverse, but haven't yet got to that frozen middle bit, are really keen on inclusion. But you get those managers in the middle who might be frightened of change, who might be worried about making mistakes, so won't take risks, who might be concerned about, if I talk to people about these quite difficult issues, I might put my foot in it or offend somebody. And actually, sometimes it's leaders need to be able to thaw, if that's the right word, that frozen middle, so that those managers feel safe to have difficult conversations, to try new things, to make mistakes, and that's okay. And I think it's all of that as well. But actually, a lot of that does come from leadership, doesn't it? And it's much harder to create an inclusive culture in an organization without that leadership commitment. It's possible, but it's certainly much harder. So, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, you really reminded me of quite a simple thing that we did at NHS England that's had a huge impact. So in our internal newsletters and communications, we have a "Hello, my name is" feature, and it's generally introducing an employee, what they work as, and some of the key parts of their role, and a little bit of personal information. So 1 year for Disability History Month, we added in a few questions as to perhaps a little bit about the barriers or the difficulty or their condition, and also what really helped. So looking at it from a positive angle.
Yeah.
And again, we asked for volunteers. There was no, you have to say this or you don't. And so people went into a lot more detail than I expected. And we came up with so many people willing to do that. And as each one got published, we got more and more feedback of, thank you so much for, publishing that and for raising that. And I always wanted to speak up about that and never felt able to. And then when we rolled into LGBTQ plus History Month, we adapted the "Hello, my name is" for that. And we continued around all of the different calendar events. And it's a really gentle and nice way to, as you say, show some leadership that the organization is willing to publish these stories and really engage with people.
Absolutely. And storytelling is so powerful, isn't it? I think if people can see, there are people who I'm working with who have hidden differences I didn't know about, then it becomes okay, and people are more happy to talk about those issues. It stops being the elephant in the room. So thank you, Barry, so much. We could talk about this forever, I know, because it's an ongoing subject. I hope it's been useful for people listening. If you have any questions that occur to you after, this event, then please do contact Evenbreak, and we can get in touch with Barry if your question is for him. And thank you very much for attending. Thanks again, Barry, for giving up your time. I know you're very, very busy, but I know it's an issue that we both feel quite strongly about. So I'm very pleased you gave up your time today.
You're most welcome, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Thank you. And look out for other Evenbreak Explores events. We've got others coming up on other topics and with other experts. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know what's going on. So thanks very much and have a fantastic day. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks.